Okay, thank you. Okay, good evening and welcome to the Council's Audit and Ethics Committee today. My name is Paul Dudfield and I'm the chairman of this meeting. The meeting is being web streamed to the public and is being attended by members through Microsoft Teams. Before we begin working through the agenda, I will go through some rules on procedure. The web streaming of this meeting is being monitored by IT services. If at any point there are any streaming issues, then I will be informed and the meeting will be adjourned until such time that the technological issues can be resolved. If during the course of the meeting any member of the committee is having connection issues, then there will be a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes to determine whether the connection issues can be resolved. If following the adjournment the connection issues cannot be resolved, then providing the meeting remains quorate, then it will continue. It will be deemed that the member with connection issues has left the meeting and will no longer be able to participate. For all attendees, please switch off your microphones and cameras. For members of the committee, your microphones and cameras should be switched off unless you are speaking. If you wish to speak during the meeting, please use the raise hand function and wait for me to ask you to speak. Voting during virtual meetings will use the raise hand function. I will call on the Democratic Services Officer to confirm the vote. Are there any questions before we move into the formal agenda? Okay, thank you. I will now ask our Democratic Services Officer to confirm the attendees at this meeting. This will be for members of the committee only. When your name is called out, please confirm your attendance.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start off with you being present, Mr. Paul Dudfield. Then we have Mr. John Eaves.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Cranham.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor McQueen.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mistry.
Present, Lynn.
Thank you. Councillor Pacey Day.
Chris, you're present. Chris.
Have you got your microphone on?
Yes, I have now.
Thank you, Councillor Pacey Day. That concludes the membership. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Okay, let's move on to the formal agenda then. So item number 1 of the agenda is to confirm the minutes of our meeting held on the 9th of June 2020. Are people happy that we confirm those minutes?
Yes, happy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 2, apologies for absence. Lynn, do we have any apologies for absence?
No, everyone's present, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So item 3, could I ask members if they have any declarations of interest to make in respect of item A, non-pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors? Okay, I'll take silence as that there are no declarations, I suppose I should say. Okay, I need to make a declaration actually under that point. So I've recently started doing some work for TIAA, who are the Council's IT audit service provider. So I'll make that declaration as a non-pecuniary interest. Okay, item B, pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors. Okay, thank you. And item C, notice under Section 106 Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. Okay, thank you everyone. Okay, so let's move on to item number 4, the draft statement of accounts. So John Illingworth, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you, Chair. Spare me 2 seconds, I'll get my copy up. In summary, the purpose of this report is to present the draft statement of accounts for consideration by the committee prior to the completion of the external audit. And the recommendation in the report is that the committee notes that the summary of the draft statement of accounts and makes any comments it feels necessary to officers in advance of the external audit. As a point of clarification in the background, I can confirm that the closure of the public inspection period will be the 11th of August rather than the July date that was in the covering report. I propose that the main focus for this presentation is Appendix B, which is page 172 of the agenda pack, which is a high-level summary of the accounts. And I'll take any questions after this. But as the report suggests, the version attached to the agenda was a draft. And I can confirm that there were a number of minor narrative formatting and presentational changes. I don't propose to go through these on an item-by-item basis due to the immaterial nature. However, to reference on page 62, in the notes for the balance sheet, that the references for the on the table have been updated prior to the submission of the draft accounts. Referencing specifically the tables in Appendix B, a late adjustment led to a £4,000 reclassification between our long-term and short-term borrowing figures. That's an overall zero variation. Before I talk specifically about Appendix B, I would like to highlight to the committee that COVID-19 does not have a large impact on the numbers within the document, largely as a result of the timing of the pandemic starting in the UK. In section 10 of the narrative report, we've referenced some of the great things we've done as an authority to support the community. However, it also references the uncertainty facing us in terms of costs and government support for dealing with those costs. From a cost perspective, we reported a £4,000 spend relating to COVID-19 as part of the outturn position for 2019-20. In note 5 of the accounts, which is titled Assumptions Made About the Future and Other Major Sources of Estimation Uncertainty, we've highlighted some of the uncertainties specifically around COVID-19. To draw your attention to two things in there. Property, plant and equipment. All in-year valuations conducted by the valuers have been reported on the basis of material uncertainty. The Material Valuation Uncertainty Forum was set up by the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors to consider the unique events related to the pandemic and its impact on the valuations, with a focus on financial reporting and measures for the accurate, consistent reporting of material uncertainty. And also financial instruments, where fund managers have been unable to be sure that prices reflected the true balance of interest for both investors and those wishing to deal with transactions have been suspended in those funds. This is the case for the funds held by the council, and it is anticipated that the market valuations reflecting true operating conditions will resume in Q2 or Q3 of 2020. I think at that point, if I draw you to page 172 of the agenda pack, it should take you to the high-level summary of the accounts. I'll give you everyone a second to get to it. And I'll just find it myself. Here we go. Is everyone okay for me to carry on?
Yes, please, John. Yeah.
So Appendix B is just a briefing note on the draft statement of accounts. It's broken down into a number of sections. I won't go through everything in detail because it's there for you to read, but I'll cover some of the highlights. So in section 1, the overall messages, you can see that from a profit and loss position, we've moved from a deficit of just under £4 million in 2018-19 to a surplus of £17 million in 1920. And you can see from the report that's largely as a result of our calculated pension liability, which is improved by £19 million within the year, but it doesn't represent a cash cost to the council. From a net cost of services position, both the general fund and the HRA costs have increased by around £2 million. Again, included within the cost of services are past service contributions for the McLeod pension case. You may recall from last year we had a contingent liability in the accounts for the anticipated impact of this, which relates to an outstanding age discrimination case for firefighters or firefighter pensions. This past service cost has now been reflected in our current IAS 19 pension valuation report, and it's valued at about £476,000. There's also an increased depreciation and impairment cost for our asset base. Again, not a cash item. So section 2, the audit preparation period. As already reported, the deadline for producing the draft statements has now moved to the 30th of November to support authorities for the dealing with coronavirus. Our external audit began on the 30th of June, which hopefully gives us plenty of time to achieve this deadline. Section 3 is the layout of the statement of accounts. I won't go through this in detail. It's there for everyone to see. The layout of the accounts is largely the same format as last year. We've got the comprehensive income and expenditure statement and the cash flow statement and the balance sheet. We've got the narrative report that tells the story of the financial and performance perspective and gives some context to the reader of the accounts about what rugby is and how rugby is dealing with its challenges and risks. Section 2 contains the main statements, the income and expenditure account, the reserves movement, and also the balance sheet and the cash flow. And section 3 is the notes to the accounts, which are two types: the reconciling and the disclosure notes. Section 4 is the HRA, and then it's followed by the auditor's comments, and section 6 is the glossary to the accounts. Then going through to the key tables, 4.1 or page 175 of the agenda pack is the balance sheet, which is a snapshot of our position at the 31st of March. You can see that our net assets have increased from 171 million to 188 million, so approximately £17 million increase. And on the next page, section points A and B give a brief summary of the more significant differences. So section A, point A, just reflects the fact that we've taken the opportunity to borrow at historically low interest rates for refinancing and for future capital expenditure. This includes £26 million from the PWLB for the high-rise replacement scheme, and this is then reflected in our short-term and long-term investments. And you will see also half at the balance sheet, £17 million of cash and cash equivalents. We held a greater degree of cash and cash equivalents at the 31st of March to maintain high liquidity levels and try and mitigate against any uncertain cash flow requirements as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. And item B is the actuarial pension assessment. Again, that's created a positive movement on the balance sheet. 4.2 is the comprehensive income and expenditure statement. Our net cost of services has increased by around £4 million. Item 1 at the bottom of that note gives a summary as to where those increases are. You can see from point A, again, there's reference to the our pension valuations and also the £476,000 as a result of the historical McLeod case. We've got a £969,000 increase in our depreciation impairment of current assets. And from a cash item perspective, you can see there's a £565,000 movement in our increased requirement of agency staff to support core business. More specifically, our CAS team had a £175,000 increased cost of agency to try and deal with some of the workload pressures that they faced during the year. However, as a result of a restructure in the team, those costs should come down significantly for 2021. We've also got £578,000 of increased staffing costs. That includes a 2% pay award. And the realities are, because the agency staff is in place to cover vacant posts, those two items should be looked in conjunction with each other. But it's probably important to note that agency costs are usually more expensive than our core funded staff. I'll go on to the usable reserve. So 4.3 is the usable reserves position. So what this is showing us is the balance of reserves between the 31st of March 2019 and 31st of March 2020. So from this, you can see that our total earmarked reserve balances has increased by 1.8 million. Specifically, the general fund has gone up by 1.8 million, which includes £541,000 transfer into general fund balances. Again, that was the decision made by council in order to help us support some of the COVID-19 pressures in 2021. We've also got £3.6 million held in our business rates equalisation reserve. Again, that's to help us for the cliff edge scenario, which is expected with the business rates reset, which is due to take place on the 1st of April 21. And you can see our HRA balances have reduced by 1.4 million as planned use has taken place. So table just underneath that 4.3 is an overall summary of our reserves, including general fund balances and HRA balances. Won't draw your attention too much to that, but you can see 1.8 million increase in general fund earmarked reserves, a 1.3 million pound reduction in our HRA reserves, and you can see the impact of the £541,000 going into general fund balances there. So an overall total of 32.7 million. Underneath that table, what we have done is complete a risk assessment at the 31st of March to capture the impact on reserves if all of our future risks crystallise. That will include everything we knew at the time as part of COVID-19, and also some of the risks that are potentially going to crystallise for the authority. What you will see is if all risks materialise as planned, there would be a £3.1 million shortfall in our reserves coming into 23-24. But what you can see between 2021 and 21-22 is the significant use of reserves, and that's largely as a result of COVID-19. What this doesn't do is include any assumptions around the additional government funding that was announced last week, because it predates it. But what we will do is update that risk assessment as part of Q1 reporting. Salaries and allowances. Bear with me a second. So salaries allowances. So table 4.4. This is often a note which has got gains interest from external stakeholders. So I thought it'd be useful to put in here for the committee's information. What the first table shows is the remuneration of the council's senior employees, and what you can see between the 2 years, apart from the head of growth and investment who started midway through 2018-19, there's not a significant change in those costs. The table below that is a summary of the banding of employees that are paid over £50,000. This excludes the senior officers, including the table above. But what you can see that there's 2 in each financial year, but the salary banding has shifted due to some turnaround in staff. Exit packages are the amounts paid to terminate an officer's employment. And again, if I draw your attention to the table, in 2018-19, we had 6 packages costing £102,000. In 19-20, it's slightly more in 8, but the cost is £97,000. And the last note in Appendix B is the members' allowances. And what you can see again is it's fairly static between the 2 financial years in terms of what's been paid to members. And I suppose at that point, I'll open the floor to any questions that people may have on the information.
Okay, thank you, John. That's very informative. So does anyone have any questions for John on the draft statement of accounts?
No, Chair.
That's fine.
No, nothing from me.
Craig, sorry, I see you've raised your hand. Sorry, I missed that. Craig. Right.
Sorry, I'm messing around with my mute button. I was going to say, John, thank you very much. That was really informative. That was all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Okay, any other questions for John? So, John, presumably now these, well, you've set it out in the report, haven't you? So these are subject to external audit now, and presumably that's ongoing as we speak?
Yes, it started last Wednesday, so yeah, it's ongoing as we speak. And yeah, we're in a departure to kind of previous years. We're trying to do it all as virtually as possible, so to speak. So yeah, we're a week in, so there's not really a lot to say at this point.
Okay, so we'd see it's a question for you. I know Grant's here as well, but we'd see the audited accounts at the next meeting. Is that the plan?
Yeah, I suppose the next meeting's scheduled for mid-October, isn't it? At this point in time, we're hoping to get the audit finished well in advance of that, and then we've got two options really. We can wait till October and get the final sign-off of the accounts then, or we can look to see whether we can arrange a meeting prior to that, probably early well, in September. Because of the holiday periods, and we'll get it dealt with as part of that. I think at this point in time, I think we'll just see how the audit goes, and then we'll follow up after that. Okay.
No, thank you. Okay. So the recommendation is that the committee notes the summary of the draft statement of accounts 2019-20 and makes any comments it feels necessary to officers in advance of the external audit. So I think we haven't made any specific comments other than to thank John for his efforts and his team. So would someone like to propose that recommendation, please?
Yeah,
I'll propose that, Paul.
Okay, and a seconder, please. John, is that you seconding? Thank you.
Yes, that's second.
Okay, so can we take a vote on that then, please? Chris Pacey-Day, I think we're just waiting on you, Councillor.
Yeah, I mean that's fine as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, that's unanimous then in that case. Thank you everyone. Okay, let's move on then. So item 5 on the agenda is the internal audit update. So Chris Green.
Thanks, Chair. So this report is set out on pages 184 through to 200 in the agenda pack. And there isn't too much to report since the last meeting 4 weeks ago. There are no changes to the internal audit plan itself, and work is progressing on track according to the plan agreed and approved by the committee 4 weeks ago. We do expect to see potentially some changes as we progress through the year, and that would usually be the case, but perhaps more so this year. And we will liaise with yourself, Chair and Vice Chair, and John as Section 151 officer between meetings as necessary, and any changes will be brought back to the committee for approval in its role as gatekeeper at the next meeting. There are no changes to resources since the last meeting, so we still have one member of the team redeployed to the customer advice and support team, and we're continuing to deliver our internal audit work remotely as far as possible. Turning to the performance information in Appendix A, which is on pages 191 to 192 in the agenda pack. Performance is better than I was expecting in the circumstances. 75% of audit actions have been implemented by the agreed date, with an overall implementation rate of 89%. There are 17 overdue actions. None of those are assessed as high risk. 3 have been assessed as medium risk, and the details of those are on page 199. The rest are regarded as low risk. And the end-to-end time for delivery I'm pleased to report has reduced to 86 days. That's a 47-day reduction compared to 9 months ago. And that does reflect a substantial reduction in the time taken to clear audit reports, which is a real positive. In terms of timeliness, you'll see there is a spike upwards to 8.9 days in the time taken between completing field work on assignments and issuing draft reports. And that's because it's taken longer for me to be able to review them after the field work's been completed, and that's due to additional workload during the pandemic. But I would say in relation to that the performance isn't poor, it's just not as good as it was, and generally 10 days is seen as a good benchmark for that particular indicator. Members are asked to note the report, and as I say, there are no proposed changes to the audit plan at this time, and happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Again, very informative. So are there any questions for Chris on his internal audit update report? John Eves.
Just really to say, I think that we have to expect there will be some disruptions, and I think that the way that Chris is handling this at the moment is very good, and certainly it's nowhere near the amount of disruption that I've personally been expecting.
Yes, yeah, no, that's fair comments. Yeah. Okay, thank you, John. Any other questions for Chris or comments? Okay, John, you've still got your hand up. Is that a new question or is that the old question? God, okay. Okay, so the recommendation is that the report be considered and noted. So would someone like to propose that, please?
Yeah, I'll propose, Chair.
Thank you, Ish. And a seconder, please.
Right, I can second that, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Paysaday. Okay, so could we vote on that now, please?
Oh God, I'm having problems.
Chris, are you happy to?
Yeah, I'm happy with it. Yeah, I'm having a slight
that
technical problem. Yeah, but that's fine.
Okay, in that case, that's unanimous then. So thank you, everybody. Thank you. Okay, so item 6 on the agenda is the annual governance statement. So presumably, Chris Green, this is you again.
It is, yes, thank you, Chair. So this report is set out on pages 201 to 229 in your agenda packs, and it sets out the Council's 2019 annual governance statement for approval. The Council is required to review every year the effectiveness of its system of internal control and to report the findings in an annual governance statement. The statement is written in the same format as the last few years, and it's based around the 7 core principles of good governance set out in the SIPFA framework for delivering good governance, dated 2016. For each principle, the document firstly outlines the arrangements in place and then details examples where those arrangements have contributed to the delivery of good outcomes, as well as outlining areas of improvement. Progress on delivery of the action plan has also been reviewed, and the details are set out for members on pages 225 and 226 in the agenda pack. An updated action plan has also been developed, and this is set out on pages 227 and 228. A number of sources are used to inform the AGS, and one of the key sources is my annual internal audit report, which was presented and considered at the last meeting. And as reported to the committee during the year, there was one audit which impacts on the AGS for 2019-20, and that was the Local Government Transparency Code. This audit resulted in only limited assurance. An action plan was agreed, and internal audit will conduct a follow-up review later this financial year to provide assurance that the requirements of the Local Government Transparency Code are being followed. The overall level of assurance takes the results of that audit into account, but also the many other areas where the Council demonstrates robust governance arrangements, and also considers the action taken during the year to improve governance and also over recent years. The overall level of assurance is therefore assessed as substantial, and that's the second highest rating. Members are asked to approve the AGS subject to SMT amendments. However, I can confirm that the senior management team reviewed the AGS at their meeting yesterday, and there are no amendments being proposed. So members are at this stage simply asked to approve the AGS. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you again, Chris. So any questions for Chris on the proposed annual governance statement? Okay, no, I had no questions myself, Chris. So can we move to the recommendation then? So could someone propose a recommendation that we approve the annual government statement?
I'll propose it.
Okay, thank you, John. And someone
I'm happy to second it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cranham. Okay, so can we vote on that item, please? Councillor Pacey Day, are you happy to support that?
Yes, I'm happy. Thank you.
Okay, okay. Thank you, everyone. Again, in that case, that's unanimous. Then, thank you. Okay, so final item, the strategic risk register update. Is this you again, Chris Green?
It is, yes. Thanks, Chair. Again, so this is set out at pages 230 to 247 in your agenda packs. And the strategic risk register was presented at the last meeting, but members queried the absence of any mention of the COVID-19 pandemic. There is a separate COVID-19 corporate risk register in place, which has been managed, and that was also presented at the last meeting. The strategic risk register was considered again by the Strategic Risk Management Group in June, taking into account the COVID-19 pandemic and its associated impacts. At this stage, a full review and update of the strategic risk register has not been completed, and that's because a new corporate strategy is currently being developed as a priority and taking into account the vastly changed climate within which the council is now operating. The strategic risk register has, however, been amended to include reference to COVID-19 and its potential impacts, and this provides a clear linkage to the separate, more detailed COVID-19 risk register, and this additional risk can be seen at page 247 in the agenda pack. Understandably, this has been assessed at this stage as the highest possible risk rating. The rest of the report and the risk register were presented and considered at the last meeting, so I don't propose to go through those areas again today, but the content is there and remains there for members' information. But members are asked to consider and note the report and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you again, Chris, and thank you for the addition of the item that we questioned at the last meeting, notwithstanding the fact that there's a separate risk register that covers that. So does anyone have any questions for Chris on this slightly updated strategic risk register and the explanations that he's given? Okay, Councillor McQueen.
Yeah, Chris, thank you very much for that. That's good to know that that's been added. I was wondering, in terms of updating the risk register, you said a new corporate structure and policy was being put in place. What timescales have we got for it being updated?
Thanks, Councillor. My understanding is that the plan is to launch the new strategy with effect from the beginning of the next financial year. So it will be ready later on in the calendar year. It will then be subject to review and approval. There'll be consultation, no doubt. And I also understand that there's to be a workshop very soon between SMT and Cabinet, at which they'll work on shaping that new corporate strategy.
So just so I'm clear, that would be April next year. So the risk register won't be updated until for about 8 months. Is that correct?
It will still be reviewed and, where necessary, updated as a matter of course at every strategic risk management group meeting. But once the new draft corporate strategy comes out, then the group will start to formulate a new strategic risk register, which will reflect the objectives of that new strategy.
Okay, thanks very much, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McQueen. Thank you, Chris. Any other questions for Chris Green? Okay, I had no questions. So the recommendation is that we consider and note the report. So if someone is happy to propose that, please.
Chair, I'll go along. Report be noted, Ish.
Okay, thank you, Ish. And the seconder for that?
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McQueen. Okay, in that case, can we vote on that recommendation, please? Okay, again, Councillor Pacey, are you happy to support that?
Yeah. I'm happy to support it, yes.
Okay, in that case, that's unanimous then. So thank you, everyone. Do we, I guess this is aimed at Lynn Ashmore. Lynn, do we need to move to exclude the public? Are there any items for private consideration, exempt information?
Yes, you still need to move that motion, Chair.
Okay.
Next two items.
Okay, so item 8 on the agenda then, members. So to consider passing the following resolution that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of information defined in paragraphs 1, 2 and 3 of Schedule 12A of the Act. So is someone happy to propose that motion?
Yeah, I will, Chair. Ish. Yeah.
Thank you, Ish.
I'll second it, Paul.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cranham. So can we vote on that, please? Okay, thank you, everyone. So that's passed unanimously. So could I ask IT to stop the live streaming and just let me know when that's happened, please?